Welcome to the show, by the way. I'm just
Hi.
talking to Olga about her presentation
We're
yesterday.
having a private show
Yeah.
here.
But what Olga did so great, it was brilliantly yesterday. It was I show us how the police state is coming together, how this police secret police basically that Donald Trump is building around North America is coming together. And she did it in a great presentation during our Authoritarianism 101 course, which happened yesterday. The seminar was yesterday, as it is every Tuesday at 8 p.m. And, Olga, for me, it was the first time I thought, oh, wow, this is really here. This secret police is here. And these are all the elements that are being fed into that. So, it was a great presentation. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you. No, that's why I have been doing the tyranny tracker because, like I was saying, I'm a documenter. I document everything in Russia. I document everything in Ukraine, here, Eastern Europe. Like all I do is document. And documenting helps me see patterns and then make comparisons of if I'm seeing the same things. This is why in 2015, when I saw Russia attacking our election, because of all the documenting of what Russia's did in Ukraine, I was like, holy crap, these are the same exact tactics that are being used in the US as they did in Ukraine during their several elections. So
Yeah, it's the first time anyone's brought that up in such a clear way. And I think it was really effective. It speaks a lot to your research and how important it is for everybody to support you, and also for history to know, at the end of the day, history will be able to look back at your notes and say, well, this is these things happened on this date, in a way that others cannot get. The next session is next Tuesday. People should really sign up for that. It'll be a really good one as well. We'll have that on both our sites coming up. And I'm sorry about today's show being later than normal. It's entirely my problem. I couldn't fit my schedule into the day that was available. But here we are with the Trump tyranny tracker for day, what is it, 157? And the lead story is all about a classified Pentagon assessment revealing that the U.S. bombing campaign on Iran's nuclear sites, hailed by Trump as obliterating the program, only delayed Iran's nuclear capabilities by a few months. Despite damage to entrances at key facilities, most underground infrastructure remained intact, and Iran reportedly moved much of its uranium stockpile beforehand. So lawmakers are going to be briefed. They were meant to be briefed yesterday. They're not going to get their briefing tomorrow. Trump says it's all the media's fault. The media's got it wrong. And Israel's backing him with some other intelligence reporting. But really, this was a failure.
yeah, look, I mean, our, men and women who flew and carried out the mission, they did it successfully, as far as what they could do with what they had available. But this plan, has been floating around for decades in the US, and there's a reason it was never executed because no one knew whether these bombs can fully penetrate and eliminate the program. And then you have these early assessments, coming out, basically saying what we all, assumed that one, that Iran moved the nuclear enriched uranium and centrifuges ahead of time, which, I mean, frankly, you would have to be an idiot. Like, if they didn't do it from the first, before the first Israeli bomb started falling, they surely did it after Israeli bombs started falling, and they had over a week to, move through their tunnels and displace it across the country. And here you have these early assessments, coming out. Trump is going to, basically force his intelligence community to fabricate it to, be in line with his narrative. But regardless, and you have the Israelis backing up, but again, who is it from the political circles? Because from the military and intelligence circles, they also have the same assessment. They have pretty much an identical assessment that, it was not destroyed. So, I mean, here we are. Bottom line is Trump took a victory lap, obliterated like 5 minutes after these bombings, and you see it now, as actual real intelligence starts coming in, that we frankly don't know what happened, and that both the US and Israeli defense and intelligence, suspect that their nuclear program is intact and can be reconstituted in a matter, from 3 months to a year.
Axios has this report from Israeli intelligence saying that there was a lot of significant damage, that the uranium has been buried, That is not what the Americans are saying. The American leaked report that came out this morning in the New York Times and the CNN clearly said that there's only been a setback for 2 or 3 months. The Israelis say it's been a couple of years that the program has been set back. It does feel like the Israelis are coming to the defense of Trump in this, because the evidence of some sort of coordination is so clear. I mean, the Iranians knew about this beforehand, so why wouldn't they move the uranium from that location? It's kind of it's the obvious thing to do if you're them.
I mean, if anyone, God forbid, ever bombed a U.S. nuclear facility, say, another country launched a war here, if we didn't know about it beforehand, I am sure that we have protocols from the second there's a hostile act to go into emergency and start moving things and protecting our nuclear facilities. So, I
Yeah,
mean, you know, it like it's just common sense. You're not going to be like, oh, look, they bombed. Let me just keep everything
yeah,
here. Let me take it
exactly.
outside so they can have a direct hit.
What do you make of the leak that came out to the New York Times and CNN today? I mean, Tulsi Gabbard is in charge of that part of the administration. She's been at odds with the president on this. It would feel to me like that leak probably came from her. You know, it's
It could
she's
have.
probably on her way out, but it feels like maybe that came from her, which means it may have come from Vladimir Putin just to embarrass the administration.
It definitely could have, but at the same time, you saw even Vance and other officials up to yesterday, until Trump this story came out, very carefully uh talking about this and saying that we may have, like, it's not the obliterate, it's not that job is done and we're finished. They were very careful because they also saw the intelligence, because the defense has their intelligence, the CIA has their intelligence, and you have various 18, or what is it? We have 17 intelligence agencies who are working through the data. But it could have been. I mean, it's funny that it came from her office. It'll be interesting.
It, it will be interesting.
Or it could be
This
someone from Headset's office. And I mean, he's been on a leaker hunt and firing everyone
Yes.
in the process and has pissed off quite a few people along the way. And I think that part of this assessment also was from the Pentagon. So
Yeah.
we'll
Could
see.
it be? It'll be interesting to see what rolls out in the next few days, because that hearing is tomorrow, that briefing, and Trump is busy attacking the New York Times and the CNN for doing this reporting. Of course, that means it lends credibility to their reporting when he does
Yeah.
something like that. The next story on the Trump tyranny tracker today: Justice Department leaders have suggested violating court orders. This is according to a whistleblower from a longtime DOJ attorney, Erez Ruveni, accused as senior Trump official Emil Bovee of urging subordinates to ignore court orders to speed up deportations. Ruveni alleges that Bovee said, was used an expletive to emphasize his intent, and described a March 14th meeting where officials discussed disobeying federal judges. Ruveni, who raised concerns in court about an unlawful deportation, was quickly fired. Bovee, now a federal appeals court nominee, denies the claims. This is a big deal when the wants to ignore the courts.
Yeah, and you know that there is truth to this whistleblower because up to today, the last I saw, Bovey is so, or Bove or Bovey,
Yeah.
um, Trump ass kisser, is so wound up about this that he's still carrying on that this is fake and that this never happened. So this did happen because he's really, like, it struck a nerve with him. But again, this is the Department of Justice. We used to be a gold standard seen around the world, and I mean, I frankly have been working on these issues for a long time, and viewed the Department of Justice every time there was an indictment that came out or an arrest made, like, you saw how solid their work was. I mean, it was absolutely zero politics, zero political pressure. Even if people could be hopping, up and down, we want this person prosecuted today, today, today. They followed the facts. And if it took them, a year or 5 years to come to the conclusion that there is means, a crime and means for indictment, they would. And the fact that you have these people now, the same hijacked DOJ, saying, oh, never mind what the courts say, never mind this. I mean, this is very dangerous because if they're ignoring the courts, you could just imagine what else they're doing and how they'll have no issues fabricating cases against oppositions or protesters or opposition or protesters or, organizations that, don't fall in line with the agenda of Trump.
Absolutely. And I mean, ignoring the courts by, it's such a weird thing for the Department of Justice to do. By the way, lots of people
Right.
saying hello to us on the chats. Hey, everybody. We're so glad you're here. I'm sorry this is a later version of the show, and I'm so glad some of you could make it. It's really great that you're all here today. Let's stick with the DOJ because that's a really interesting place to go to next because Donald Trump is dismantling the decades old organized crime unit that is inside the DOJ and replacing it with, get this, a White House and Department of Homeland Security led task force steered by Stephen Miller. Oy. Prosecutors will lose control over investigations, giving political appointees power to decide which cases to pursue. This represents a fundamental shift in the independent prosecutorial decisions making of the
Right.
law. This is insane. I mean, Stephen Miller is just not the right person to be doing anything, really. But he's certainly
Yeah.
not the right person to be leading anything remotely related to organized crime and prosecuting them.
I mean, as far as Stephen Miller is concerned, AOC and anyone who speaks out against Trump and
Right.
organized crime. So you could see where this is going and how, I mean, there are two angles here. One is the corruption angle that organized crime members can now pay the White House and say, get rid of this investigation. Here's a hefty fee. And thank you. What did Trump say? Thank you for your attention to.
It does matter. Yeah. That's his line. I think you just froze there a little bit for us. Yeah. You just broke up, but you're maybe coming back.
And thank you
Uh,
for your attention to this
yeah.
matter. And then you have the other part aspect of it, which is extremely scary, that you have Stephen Miller, who's absolutely the most insane figure, I think, there. I mean, he puts it, even Trump looks sane compared to him. And he will be in charge of deciding who exactly is the organized crime, which case should go, which case should we fabricate, what is the organized crime. I mean, and you could see where this goes. It's going to be
It's
like
so
a sham
dangerous.
circus,
Yeah. I
like in
mean,
Russia.
because Miller is really a dangerous guy. He's a figure. What he thinks about all these issues, immigration and others, are just so scary and off the map. They're not the kinds of things that everybody would agree with at all. But in organized crime, of course, Donald Trump has been linked to organized crime himself. There's been a long history and a long documented history of his involvement with Russian organized crime, but with other organized crime organizations in the world, including the La Casa Nostra. So it makes me wonder whether this is really just their way of controlling, whether these organized criminals get prosecuted at all. If it's all going through the
Wow.
White
Yeah.
House, they're just going to be able to say, hey, that's my buddy, from this organized crime syndicate, and that's that guy from this one, and let them all off the hook. We no longer have to prosecute these.
Yeah. And from some ties to organized crime go back to the 70s. I mean, with
Mm,
his father. And
yeah,
through the real estate, through Brooklyn, he, dealt with a lot of people in my old neck of the woods, Brighton Beach, which was mafia haven for Russian with mafia and intelligence both.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, no, it's extremely I mean, sickening that this is happening, and it's dangerous because again, like I said, there are two aspects to it. The corruption aspect, where
mm,
anyone who either pays him or anyone who's a buddy, is not going to have charges filed, or they're not even going to be bothered investigated. And then the other aspect is, who decides what organized crime is? I mean, Stephen Miller.
yeah,
And you
and
can you
it's
could twist around those words a lot and say, that anti-corruption organizations or organized crime, or corruption, or anti disinformation organizations who tackle disinformation operations. So I mean, this is extremely dangerous because they play very loosely with words and manipulate everything to serve their agenda. And that's
And when we spoke about it earlier on in the show about how this, and what you said about last night about this sort of the secret service police that they're building, Well, guess what? I mean, a lot of the people that they're looking to recruit for those are not being vetted correctly. They're criminals. And here again, we're seeing in this thing that the organized criminals are sort of going to be let go, basically. The mob is not going to be prosecuted. The mafia is going to be allowed to continue to operate. It's such a reversal of our normal, order of things that we're now allowing the criminals to basically operate freely within our society.
Yeah. I mean, and you saw the same happen where they dismantled, any kind of corruption task force. They no longer will be checking anyone who filed the foreign agents, like you won't have to really be required. So you could work for foreign interests, Iranian, Russian, Chinese, whoever you want. You don't have to file it, and no one's really going to be looking. So I mean, it's just a lot, and it's a dangerous skewing of things, especially if you look any given day at Stephen Miller's Twitter account. I mean, the man is just gone.
It's a very, very, very complicated and dangerous figure. Speaking of dangerous, Trump officials are demanding unprecedented access to state-held databases containing sensitive personal data ranging from Medicaid and SNAP recipients to voter rolls and DMV records. Under a sweeping executive order, agencies like the unauthorized DOJ and the Department of Homeland Security are consolidating this data to target immigrants, detect fraud, and build vast surveillance capabilities. This represents an unprecedented federal grab of our state information that shouldn't be mixed with all the federal data that they have, but that's exactly what they're intending to do.
Yep. So first they, sent in Musk sent in these operatives to collect and fuse all the federal data, and now they're after the state data. So you can see where again this is going, that they are building a centralized surveillance system. And I mean, this is what it is. I mean, that's it. There's no need for the federal government, to have access to SNAP and to your local DMV records and to anything that you do on a state or local level. I mean, these systems are separate for a reason. And this just goes to show you, the what the true intent of Doge was. So,
Yeah. They're building a surveillance state. There's no doubt about it. And this particular fusing of the state voter rolls is particularly concerning to me. I mean, you've got
mhm,
that information is very, very valuable. Where people vote, where they live, can really determine how they vote, and they'll cross-reference that with all the other data that they've been collecting, including all the social media monitoring that they've been doing,
mhm.
all the social security information that they've been getting, your tax records. They will have a very good view of who you are and how to convince you to vote a certain way, or if not just convince you to vote a certain way, to either eliminate your voting or eliminate your voters' rights because of redistricting or whatever. There's a whole bunch of ways that they can do things to eliminate your vote and say in this democracy by fusing all of this together under this Palantir driven database. So this is a very concerning development.
Yeah, and I had written, and you had written about the surveillance system, and I had written about it in April. And in my article, I mentioned when I was warning people, like, hey, they're building a surveillance system, that Europe has the most comprehensive laws, and there's a reason for it. And partly it is because they don't ever want to go down the road of the information that Hitler had when he was pulling data and creating target lists. For me, more so than anything else, it is the target list.
Mm.
Coming from the Soviet Union, this is exactly how it operates. Everyone is on a list, and literally, especially under the Soviet Union, the practice has been brought back. You could were put on a like blacklisted, and that means you couldn't get a job, you couldn't do anything. Like you were just outcast from society if you cross the state. So for me, even the bigger issue of anything, more so than them having all this information, is creating these target lists. And then once we get to a point of target list, this becomes even more dangerous because then, through AI, they can literally sort out target list and put them together in a matter of seconds based on whatever the parameters they're looking for.
That really is the big issue. AI is so brilliant at sorting through data like this that they'll be able to provide lists of all sorts of people depending on what their categories they want. And that is very terrifying because they'll be able to do that on a large scale in a way that, the Nazis couldn't do that. But they can do that with AI. Staying
And
with
this is
Doge.
what they, sorry, and this is
No.
exactly what the Nazis did and what the Stalin did. And
Mm,
frankly, everyone is, they created these lists. And then you had lists against minorities, against, at that time before, but the LGBTQ community before it wasn't labeled that way. The Roma, the Jews, like you can create lists, and we've seen the historical consequences of these
mm,
lists. Once you have
absolutely.
these lists, I mean, there's nothing that's ever been good coming out of
Yeah.
you being on a list.
Add that to the masked men that are picking up illegal immigrants and undocumented workers. Well, you can see how this will lead to those vast
Control
lists.
to
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's very dangerous. Probably the most pernicious thing going on in our world today. Edward Corristine, this is staying with Doge, the 19-year-old Musk operative known as Big Balls, has resigned from his government post a month after Musk's White House departure. Corristine had worked across multiple agencies despite being unvetted and tied to hackers, leaked data, and a cybercrime gang. His resignation follows the broader collapse of Musk's influence in the Trump administration. It does feel like the Doge that Elon Musk built is no longer, but Doge still continues.
Doge itself continues, and the mission continues. Whether it will be the same operatives, we don't know, and they seem to be falling like flies. But the actual mission and purpose of what Doge was set up will continue to purge the agency, to look for any kind of disloyalty to Thai leader, to create a centralized surveillance system. I mean, that still continues. But I added this only because, Big Balls is gone. I mean,
It's
God
been a big
knows what
name
he
in this
did with our
administration.
data, because he could have walked out with all our data. He was embedded in Social Security, IRS, and several other agencies. So, I mean, we don't know now. Maybe Big Bulb is going to be putting our data up for sale on hacker
He,
forums in
he could
Russia.
he could have been. He's related to I think his grandfather was Valery Martinov, who's a former KGB spy. I mean, there's not even like you have to look very far to find his Russian connections. So maybe that's one of the reasons they sent him out of Doge and no longer working with the government. But it is interesting. He's gone. He probably has left with a lot of data. You would imagine he has.
I'm sure. And again, this is extremely troubling because one, you cannot reverse this because, I mean, once they've been there going through the systems and stealing all our data, like there's nothing we could do. And second of all, every single one of them, it's unvetted. No one when I mean, I've never seen this. Like if you want to even, I don't know, work in NYPD as a desk clerk, you have to follow an extensive criminal check and background check and every single thing. And that's not even talking about a police officer where they'll go find your your teacher from kindergarten and all your family, friends, parents, and, kind of try to build up a profile on you to see what type of person you were throughout your life. But I mean, here you have these people who are walking in, zero vetting. We don't even know who they are. It took Wired and several other news outlets to start uncovering their identity, for which Ed Martin, who was serving at the time as the interim DA in DC, threatened people, for uncovering these people's names who are stealing our information. So there's
And
no oversight, no accountability, no vetting, nothing.
that happens when you have a Russian guy named Sergei Gore who refuses to go through his own vetting in charge of all your personnel
And
vetting
that's
in the
not
White
his
House.
name.
Yeah,
That's
what's not
not
a,
even his name. That's
uh,
another thing. You have someone who 4,000 records he's in charge
mm,
of, and God knows what else he's taken. And the guy, that's not even his real name. His real name, I had, looked into him a decade ago because he's been on my
mm.
radar for quite a while. He's the one who delivered the infamous letter with Rand Paul to Putin. And I believe it was
Oh,
18,
really? Okay, that's
yeah,
interesting.
he worked for Rand Paul, so you could
Oh,
just imagine.
that tells you exactly who pays the bills
Exactly.
there. Mm.
But he is the one who his real name is Garahovsky. That's his real name.
Okay.
And he claims he was born in Malta. He was not born in Malta. He was born in Russia. So I mean, again, we have someone in charge of data of our federal workers who are doing vetting for these jobs, but refuses to get vetted because he doesn't trust the deep state.
It's just, I keep reminding people. I just told Dean this on the Five Stack as well. Trump works for Putin. That's who he works for. That's where the orders come from. And you can see it in every single decision that's made out of that White House. You can certainly see it today in the Iranian story, but you can also see it with this hiring process. But it is good that Big Balls is gone. I wonder if he's going to do a tell-all or a big interview in some place. It'll be interesting to see
I don't
if
know
he does.
if anyone's on hacker networks in Russia, check to see if our data is there, because I'm sure that's where it's going
Probably
to be
making some
sold.
money.
Yeah.
That is the Trump Tyranny Tracker for today. We have another session of our seminar next Tuesday night. People can still sign up. It's Authoritarianism 101. And we encourage people to sign up, because you may have missed the first four, but you can catch up on those slides. And certainly each seminar is self-contained. So everyone should still sign up. You can find it on the Trump Tyranny Tracker or Unmasking Russia's website, or narrative.org, NARATIV.org. That's the late edition of the Trump Tyranny Tracker today. Thank you for being here.
Delayed.
It's delayed, but still present.
Yes.
Just made it. We'll be back tomorrow at 2:00 at the regular time, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for being here, and have a great day, Olga.
Bye. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.